Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about descriptive research. So before we get into the class, I would like to say that before you can explain why something is happening or why something happens, you need to describe what is happening. That sounds obvious, very obvious, right? But in practice, most researchers skip this step constantly. They jump to explanations before they even have accurately described the reality in front of them. And that's how bad theories get built. Alright? So let us get into what today's class is. Descriptive research is step one of almost all psychological knowledge, and we are going to understand exactly what it is and when it is the right tool. Well, descriptive research has just one goal, and its goal is to describe a phenomenon as it naturally exists. Its goal is to describe a phenomenon accurately, systematically, and without manipulating anything. So that means the way the phenomenon is, which is, of course, what we call this the interest of the study. What the researcher is interested in studying, which is a phenomenon, should be at its natural state without any kind of manipulation or interference. So that's the goal of descriptive research. Okay. Also, it answers the question what is happening. All right, not how, not why, just what is actually there. Okay, so that is what it does. Also, it does not establish cause and effect. All right, it does not manipulate variables. That's not its job. That belongs to experimental research, and we are going to learn experimental research soon. We're going to learn about it soon. Alright, so the three main methods of descriptive research is 1. Naturalistic observation, 2. Case studies, 3. Surveys. Okay, and we are going to cover each and every of these main methods in the upcoming episodes. Alright, we're going to cover them in full depth. This particular class is just to give you a framework of everything descriptive research is about. Okay, so when do you know when to use descriptive research as a tool? Well, I have 4 situations where descriptive research would be the right choice. Okay, so when the topic is new, when the topic is new, when a particular you've identified a particular research problem, right? This is when to use descriptive research. That's the best time. Okay, you cannot explain what you have not yet described. Okay, so descriptive research maps unknown territory before anyone tries to explain it. So you have to, when a topic is new, when it's happening at that moment, you have to know you have to describe what is happening first of all, before you will now go and start talking about why it is even happening. So that is when to use descriptive research. Okay, another time to use descriptive research is when manipulation is unethical. Okay, so you cannot cause depression in participants to study it. All right, so descriptive methods let psychologists study real conditions without engineering them. So you've seen the methods that I said. You the main methods of descriptive research that I mentioned in the previous slide. These methods help the researcher to get information or to study real conditions, to observe them as they are happening without, causing harm. All right. So that is one goal, one situation you can use descriptive research. Also, you can use descriptive research when you are studying natural behavior. So, you see, a lab, when you decide to bring participants into a lab to study a particular behavior or a particular thing you are trying to study as a researcher, when the participants are in the lab, they might not act in a way they'd naturally act if they were in a natural situation. If maybe whatever situation you're trying to create in the lab, or whatever atmosphere you're trying to create in the lab, to see the effect on the participants, to get your information from them, the results may not be as natural as you want it. It will not be really accurate, right? It might not be very valid. Okay, so this is the best time to use descriptive research, because now you are now going to use one of the main methods, which is, of course, what I've talked about, naturalistic observation and all that. You're going to use one of the main methods to study behavior as it is in the natural environment or in the natural habitat, so that you can get the results that you want. You can get valid and accurate results. Okay. Another situation to use descriptive research is when you're building a hypothesis. So descriptive findings generate the questions. All right. They are the ones that generate those statements, the hypothesis at that point. When you use the main methods to describe at that moment, a hypothesis is easier to build with your descriptive research. Okay. And then when you've built them with your descriptive research, the hypothesis with your descriptive research, you can use experimental research to answer the hypothesis later. So this is where the scientific cycle connects. All right. So let's look at this in a real life example. Meet Sewa. Sewa is a primary school teacher who has noticed something. She has noticed that her quieter students seem to struggle more during group tasks. That is an observation. Okay, but she does not know why yet. She can't explain yet. All right. So what does she do? She does not assume like most researchers would do, or naturally most of us will do. We try to explain why a behavior is happening before we even try to describe it, right? Sarah does not do that, because she understands that the first step to take is to describe. So she observes rather than assuming. Okay. So Sewa commits to 4 weeks of naturalistic observation. That is one of the main methods of the descriptive research. That is one way to do descriptive research. Okay. And then she watches her students during group activities. recording participation patterns without intervening. So, this is how you do naturalistic observation, which is one way to do descriptive research, right? You observe your interest, your study of interest or your phenomenon without interfering, without manipulating anything. You're just studying them as they appear. You are describing, you are recording what is happening. Okay? That is what Sewa does. Alright. So, what does she find out? She finds out that her quieter students contribute fewer verbal ideas but produce more written work independently. So they are not disengaged, okay, but they engage differently. So you see now that this description is now the foundation for a meaningful research question. All right. When Sewa does the observation, she can now describe the situation, what is happening. She has described what is happening right now. You see, this is where research questions generate from, which we call the hypothesis. And I've already said that in the previous slide, that descriptive research helps generate research question, helps generate the hypothesis. So now a meaningful research question like, why does this difference exist between her quieter student and her non-quiet student? Why does it exist, right? Then maybe another question will be, is it introversion, is it social anxiety, or is it a learning style preference? Okay, so now there is this wondering. She's now wondering what is going on. At some point, she will be able to gather this whole question and then turn it into a prediction, a hypothesis. All right, which I have already talked about, I think. Have I? Yes. Or yes, I would have already shared the video by then, but if I haven't, I will still share it anyways. So you see that she has described the situation, and none of these her research questions that have been generated, none of it would have or can be answered without first describing the pattern accurately, which is what Sewa has done. Alright, so this is the power of descriptive research. It makes the invisible visible. Okay, so that deeper investigation becomes possible. Okay, so now she knows what is happening, and now she can explain. She can explain. She can know why, and then from there she can predict an outcome, and then from there she can then do whatever it is she wants to do with her study. So we are taking away 3 things from this class. Number 1 is descriptive research answers what, not how, and not why. It describes reality as it actually is. Alright. Number 2, it is the starting point for almost all psychological knowledge. So it's always observation before explanation. It's always description before theory. Okay. Number 3, the 3 methods of descriptive research, which is naturalistic observation, case studies, and surveys, are the tools we use to do descriptive research. so that we can do it accurately. So in our next class, we're going to go deep on the first main method of descriptive research, which is naturalistic observation. We're going to look at what it looks like in practice, why it works, and where its limits are. I'll see you in the next class. Bye.